This is the Be One Change One podcast, where our mission is to help listeners define values, practice integrity, and inspire change.
Our vision is to mentor men and empower them to achieve more by taking responsibility for shaping their own lives.
He's Cass, an evolving man who has been shaped by adversity and continues to grow through his imperfections.
And he's Roscoe, an imperfect work in progress that tries to suck less every day.
Between us, we have over 40 years of Air Force fighter pilot experience with countless hours as trainers, instructors, and mentors.
Join us and learn to take responsibility for your own life as we dive into subjects from leadership to resilience to vulnerability.
Be the one who changes their course. Be decisive, driven, and purposeful. Set the example for others. Lead. We wish we'd had this show when we were younger men.
Be the one.
Uh-oh.
No,
Never good
Yeah.
to start a podcast with but yeah,
Come
sorry,
on, Roscoe.
I got a weird pop-up here that said we were live streaming, but crisis averted. We're not live
Okay.
streaming. All right.
We're good?
Well, we're recording. How's that?
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so dude, today I wanted to talk about, well, I think we both wanted to a certain extent after we've had the pregame, but just community. Like, we talk a lot about the 1 in 5 and kind of how to circle yourself with folks that are going to be good influences in your life, but I think community in a larger aspect is just as important, right? And part of what kind of brought me to the decision point to maybe have this conversation was speaking with a friend recently who is really struggling with this, right? Who, recently kind of separated from the job that they had been in, where they kind of had that community, those relationships, those interactions on a daily basis, is doing some remote work, and is an introvert by nature, and so is kind of happy being separated and not having a lot of social interaction necessarily, but is also finding themselves needing that social interaction to a certain extent. And so that kind of piqued my interest because there's been a lot of research in the last couple of years about kind of male loneliness and kind of the epidemic that's starting amongst men in the country. And a lot of it's driven by social media, but I pulled up some statistics, and I'll just go through those real quick just to kind of set the stage, and then we can talk about community and maybe how to build it from there. But a lot of recent surveys and studies have revealed that declining friendships. So the average number of close friendships for American men has dropped from 3.5 to 2.1 since 1990. About 15% of men reporting having no close friends at all, up from 3% in 1990. Men over 30 are particularly affected, with 1 in 5 reporting they have no close friends to discuss personal matters with. That's kind of scary. The mental health impact. Men with fewer close friends report higher rates of depression, obviously, anxiety compared to those with strong social connections. And then 61% of men report that work obligations make it difficult to maintain close friendships. These statistics kind of highlight a growing social isolation crisis, particularly in modern society where traditional friendship building opportunities have become less common, mostly driven by social media. So then I went and looked at like some teen male statistics. So social media impact. 45% of teenage boys report feeling more lonely despite being connected on social media platforms.
It's not real. Sorry.
Well, that's just it. Well, and you're going to like this, but sports participation, teen males who participate in team sports report 60% lower rates of loneliness compared to non-participants, right? Because what do you have in a team? You have community, right? You have some shared interests. You have some shared struggle. You have all these things. 38% of male teenagers say academic stress leads them to isolate. 70% of teenage boys report that online gaming is their primary form of social interaction with friends. I've seen that in my personal life with some of my kids, where, a lot of the social interaction they get is on Discord, and through gaming, and is not necessarily face to face. Emotional expression. Only 1 in 4 teenage boys feels comfortable discussing emotional problems with their male friends. And so, yeah, right. There's some unique challenges, I think, that men in general and younger men in particular are facing just because of the nature of how social media has kind of dominated that landscape and how we interact with one another. And so I just really found it kind of interesting talking with this friend about how, community, which I don't think you and I have talked a lot about, um, how important that is, right? And having people, not necessarily just your 105, but those social interactions, those places where you feel connected to something bigger than you may exist, and the effect that can have on you, good or bad. So that's kind of what I wanted to open up with today.
Yeah, I already got a page full of notes.
All right, go.
Well, no, I think that there was so much in there. First of all, you kind of pointed towards social media quite a bit in that, and personally, I would kind of expand that just a little bit, and I would say technology in general, not specifically social media, although I know that that's a big part of it, obviously. But like you mentioned, the video gaming and, our kids, or my kids, when they were in high school, a lot of their social time was sitting in their rooms playing Call of Duty together.
Yeah,
And, whatever video, John Madden or Madden '08,
yeah,
or I don't know what it
yes,
was. Um, and then there's things like text messaging and email and all that. So it's not just social media, but how often, like when we were growing up and we had telephones connected to the wall, there was no such thing as text messaging, and we would have to pick up the phone and call our friend and be like, "Hey bro, you home? You going to be there for the next 15 minutes? All right, I'm getting on my bike, I'll ride over." Because how about this? When I was dating my high school girlfriend, she lived in the next county. So I couldn't talk to her for hours at night because my dad wasn't going to pay the long distance phone bill county to county. So
yeah,
I had to go and see her. Yeah, I mean it was, so it was just different without all the technology. And I'll tell you, man, and I'm not gonna dwell on this cruise that Katie and I just went on, but dude, I'm telling you, it's so fucking liberating when you just put your phone in airplane mode and put it away. I I mean, the only thing that I used my phone for 8 days was to find Katie on the boat via WhatsApp.
yeah,
That was it. And listening to music when I went to the gym. That was, and so I mean, it's really good, I think, for us to unplug from technology. I didn't watch TV. Um, I it's just, sit there and look out the window, enjoy nature, go for a walk, talk to people, do things. When you mentioned the male loneliness thing, I think there's a good distinction to be made between being alone and being lonely.
that's
I
very
think those
true.
two things. I think those things are very different, right? I enjoy being alone, but I'm not lonely because I sit back here in my room sometimes and I just turn off the lights and just read a book or stare into the darkness or I write or whatever. But I'm not lonely when I do that because if I'm reading a book, I'm in that other world. If I'm watching GOT, I'm in that other world. If I'm writing,
Yeah,
I'm in that other world and I'm interacting with those characters and my brain is going, and it's a little weird to say this, but I'm having conversation with these people. I'm interacting with them.
yeah. Well, I think it's
Um,
stimulation on a different level, right?
it
So,
is. It
and that's really
absolutely
what it
is.
comes down to.
But if you're a hermit who never talks to people and never gets out of your little bubble, then that can lead to loneliness.
Yeah,
And I mean, still get up and go to work every day, and I enjoy the 30 or so guys that I work with, and we have conversation and all that. And I get that little social feel during the day, much like you do when you go on your trips. You go down to the bar and hang out with your captain or whatever. You've called me a couple of times, sitting there having good conversation with other people, and uh, so you're not a lonely person, but you don't mind sitting in your hotel room being alone with your thoughts, with your book, just staring out the fucking window at the pedestrians on the street, going,
yeah,
"Wow, it sucks to be them because it's windy outside," or whatever.
yeah. No, I think that's a good delineation because there are times that it's healthy, I think, to be alone and to be alone with your thoughts, especially when we talk about, I think one of the things that kind of aligns with the things that we talk about on the podcast is when we're younger, we're in a hurry to prove ourselves. And I think when we get older, we recognize that it's not really about proving ourselves, it's about improving ourselves, right? And I think one of the things that you and I have tried to stress is, dudes, do the improving piece of it earlier because it'll get you further, right? Like the growth piece in all of this is the improvement of yourself. And so there's times where it's absolutely spot on to be, alone in your thoughts, doing your thing,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're introverted like I am, you're going to spend a lot of time because that's how you recharge, right? But you also don't want to isolate to the point where you don't have a sense of community, where you don't have a sense of, I don't have any relationships outside of this that I can rely on, right?
Yeah.
Or, I don't have any close friends. I don't have that one of five in my group. And there may be times, we've talked about this too. There may be times in your journey where you're in a transition and you don't have that. And that's okay, right? But the point is you need to go out and find it. You need to go out and build it, right? Don't just stay in that isolated
Yeah.
space, because that's what will lead to that loneliness
So,
eventually.
so I was having a conversation a few days ago, and it's been about a week ago, with a guy, and we started kind of spitballing this idea of Katie not moving somewhere else. And it was a really interesting thought exercise when we got down to it. Katie and I kind of sat down after me and the dude had the conversation, and he kind of planted a seed. And so I came home and I talked to Katie about it, and I was like, let's just go down this rabbit hole just for fun, and it got to that point. It got to that point in the conversation after we went through the logistics of, moving all of our shit and houses and cars and whatever, kids, who knows. It got to that point where we were talking about, well, yeah, but we don't know a single person there. Not one. I have a couple of guys that I've texted with over the years that are at this location. And so fast forward until last night, and we're at this little get together, and one of the couples that we're friends with, their daughter is split from her significant other. So we're on the way home, and Katie was telling me, man, didn't she look sad? And I said, yeah, and I overheard some conversations with her and her kids. It kind of made me go, wow. Well, I guess the grandparents, our friends, they offered to take the kids for the night and let her go out with her friends and kind of get something out of her system. And she said, yeah, I don't have any friends. So now go back to the conversation that Katie and I were having, and I'm driving down the highway. I said, Katie, if we were to move to this other location, what's one of the first things that we would do? We would go out.
Yeah.
Go downtown, go to the Riverwalk, go to the local restaurants and meet people. Go find a church and talk to people. You have to make an effort, I think, to do this. And when we're talking about the younger generation here, I don't want to miss an opportunity to take some of the blame as from our generation. And I don't want to point the finger at anybody specifically, but I will definitely own my share of, I think we got lulled into a couple of traps. One, there's this trap of, well, I want my kids to have it easier than I did. Okay. All right. I'll buy that for a second. And then the other trap was, with technology came a pass-through parenting style where how many kids do you see in a public setting now? Go to the airport. This is a great one. How many kids are sitting there on iPhones or iPads?
Yeah.
Because and how many people send their kids to their room and have them play video games instead of coming in there and putting together a puzzle? Yeah, it's go do that. Let that distraction occupy your time for a little bit. Meanwhile, I can do what I want to do. And I think that I'm definitely guilty of it. I'm not going to say anybody else, but I think that I think that's led to some issues now that those kids are older. Some kids have never been told no before. Some kids don't know the value of working hard for something, getting out of their bubbles, trying new things socially. And then you brought up the sports thing. And there's so much to be learned from being part of a team, especially a sports team, because it is high pressure, because because it is win or lose. It's black or white. And I've always hated, I still hate the everybody gets a trophy mentality. I've always hated that. If you don't win, you don't get a trophy. Period. And that's just the way that I think it is, right? Because I think you ought to get what you earn and nothing else.
Yeah,
There's
well, I
so
think
many other intangibles though, I think, that I'm going to have to go on a rant about sports. I'll pause in a minute, but
no, go.
for the kids that don't have an opportunity to play sports up until high school, almost everyone has an opportunity to be on a club team or a public team or the city team or something like that. And it doesn't matter if it's fucking chasing a soccer ball around or a jogging team or a football team. It really doesn't matter. You got a bunch of people together that are working towards a common goal. You got one guy that's giving them instructions, and you learn so much from that. Oh, by the way, when you do something really good, it's a lot of fun. When you do something really bad, you all suffer together, and that builds camaraderie, and that builds team, and that builds community. You know, it's like it's like when we were in flight school and one of your bros fails a ride. What do? You rally around the guy and you help
Yeah,
him, right?
yeah,
It's not like, oh, fuck him. He's not a pariah. It's not like
yeah.
he's a shitty dude. He's like, no, man,
No,
he's part of our team. We need to help him, because I might be
yeah,
next.
yeah, exactly.
Sorry. I'm out.
No, it's there's a lot of truth to that. And I think the importance of that example is like we've talked about this, right? Like Brene Brown talks about we're hardwired for connection, right? And there's a certain amount of connection that you can get through Discord and gaming and stuff like that, but how deep is it, right? In that the deeper connections that you make are typically in places in your life where you have to struggle. And that's a good sports analogy as well, right? When you have to grind on a day-to-day
Mm.
basis to prove yourself, when you have to grind with,
Mutual suffering creates a
yeah,
bond.
the
Yeah.
the lineman group you're with, or the defensive group you're with, or the wide receiver group you're with, or the quarterback group you're with, and you're competing against each other, but you're trying to make each other better at the same time. Like
Yeah.
there's so many tools, not to mention the fact that one of the great things that I think about sports for younger people is, it teaches you how to lose and how to win. There's a lot that goes into that, right? It teaches you
Yeah.
that when you put effort into something and you win, like that's a great feeling, right?
Yeah.
Because you recognize
Yeah.
that the effort that you put in actually led to that victory, right? And those are life
Yeah,
learning
dude.
lessons, right? And then it also teaches you that, when you come up short, that it's okay. Like that's part of the process as well, right? And so what do? We go back to task. We figure out what went wrong. How do we get better? What do we need to do to improve? How do we make sure that the next time whatever happened that led to that failure doesn't happen again, right? And so those are all great and valuable
Mm.
lessons. But even beyond that, like even if you're not a young man in high school who can go join a high school team, let's say you're a 20 something or a 30 something or even a 40 something or 50 something. What can you do? Right? Well, dude, there's rec leagues everywhere. And you may not be good at a sport, right? But this is how you can build community. Maybe you like softball, maybe you like basketball, maybe you like volleyball, whatever it is, dude. Go find a rec team and go join. And you may suck, and that's okay, right? But learn and build relationships with the people that are on that team.
Okay, Cass, what
And
if I'm a fucking nerd and I don't have an athletic bone in my body? What else could I do?
well,
Do I have to go
dude,
play softball, really?
no, but right, there's all kinds of things that you can do, right?
No,
There's
join a
probably
fucking book club. I mean,
exactly.
yeah,
There's book clubs, there's
there's
art
all kinds of
clubs,
shit.
there's whatever you may be interested. Dude, there's even fucking gaming clubs. Like you name the game, there's probably a club for it if it's a big known game, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's so many ways to, I think, reach out, and to expand our horizons a little bit and to find ways and opportunities to build
Mhm.
community. You know,
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my encouragement is to try those things, right? Like you have to, and again, this goes back to that courage over comfort, getting uncomfortable or getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Maybe you're uncomfortable doing that kind of thing, but dude, maybe that's exactly what you should do, right? You've got to build some community in your life. You have to
Yeah.
have some support structures and some people that you can rely on, or just avenues and areas that you can learn from.
You mentioned depression and anxiety and gave the stats there. And I just can't help but think that this is one of those snowballs that's going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger, because it's kind of like that self-licking ice cream cone. Like
Yeah.
What did fat bastard say? Because I eat because I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy because I eat.
No, I'm
Well,
fat because I'm eat, and I eat because I'm fat. That's what he said.
something like that.
Yeah.
You're depressed because you don't have any friends, and you don't have any friends that you can talk to about being depressed. So you become more depressed. Now you can't get it off your chest because you don't have any friends to talk to about, and so it's this like, it's this shitty thing that's just going to grow and grow and grow and metastasize and just get bigger and bigger because you don't have an outlet for it, right?
Yeah.
Another thing that you mentioned that was recent to me because of a conversation I just had last night was the academics, where you said that the academic obligations are creating hardship for these people and making them think ill of themselves and making it hard. Oh, it's hard because I've got to devote so much time to my academics and that. Man, I just had kids go through high school recently. It
Yeah.
ain't that fucking hard,
Well,
right? You got do-over after do-over after do-over. The teachers are so freaking lenient right now.
And to be honest, Roscoe, I don't know how much of that is how challenging the academics are as opposed to ego.
Could be.
I'm struggling in an area, but I don't want people to know that I'm struggling with a subject, so I'm not going to reach out and get help. I'm just going to muddle through.
Valid.
Because I don't want people to think that I'm stupid, right? It's that whole shame game.
But what does that lead
talked about
to?
before, right? Like, I don't want to feel shame in my life. I don't want people to judge me. I don't want people to think I'm stupid, so I'm not going to ask for help. Which is the dumbest fucking thing that you could do.
Well, that leads to people who are unprepared for the real world.
Yeah.
We've got a situation going with one of our family members that they're struggling with the idea of holding one of their kids back in a grade because the child just didn't perform at the level they needed to. And I was talking to this guy not too long ago, and I said, man, here's the challenge, right? As parents, specifically as a dad, one of your roles as a dad, the way that I view it, is to prepare your kids for real life. And sometimes that's really hard, and you got to make some hard decisions. You would rather that kid fail when he's very young rather than fail when he's 18 and graduates high school. What if you don't hold him back? Let's just war game this out for a second. Fast forward to the time that he's 18, he gets a diploma, and he doesn't have the skills that he needs to survive in the real world. Whereas if you give him a chance to do it over now, it's like hooking a guy on BFM. It doesn't mean he's going to be a bad fighter pilot. It means that he had a bad ride. It means he's just not ready to go to high aspect, right?
Yeah.
So I don't view it that much differently. And the other thing that you mentioned was work obligations are making it so hard. Man, I just listened to this podcast. Do you know who Theo Vaughn is?
Yeah.
A comedian. He had Mike Rowe on his. Everybody knows who Mike Rowe is, right? Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe. I like Mike Rowe because he tells it like it is.
Yeah,
I think he's just a genuine, hardworking guy.
Yeah, straightforward.
He's rich as fuck, so I'm not going to put myself in his category or whatnot. But he's not afraid to get his hands dirty, and he's got his own stories and whatnot, and he tells it like it is. And one of the things that he said was, our society, we have an entire generation that didn't get an opportunity to do things like wood shop and auto mechanics and stuff like that because they took it out of the schools, right? Now we can go into the whole reasons why they did that, but the result is still the same. All right. You got a whole lot of kids who didn't get to try a lot of those things and get to expand and experience. And maybe some of those guys found a niche. Maybe you have a kid that's, playing video games right now that could have been an awesome woodworker or carpenter or a brake mechanic or whatever, because our society needs those guys. Now we have a deficit of those people because of our generation. We tried to make it easier for our kids, and now we don't have the people that are going to be able to fill those spots here in a few years.
Yeah.
He told this story of there's a conglomerate company that builds ships on the eastern seaboard, and this conglomerate contacted him because he's in with all the, the blue collar, the welders, the electricians, the plumbers, all that, all things that are needed to create and build a ship. And they said, hey, we've got all these openings. Can you help us? Can you help us find some of these people? We've looked all over and we can't find them. Where are they? And he says, well, they're in the 8th grade right now. We're going to have to go back to that generation and hopefully fix it so that in 6 or 7 years, you can put this kid into an apprenticeship and turn him into a ship welder. That's kind of how bad it is right now for our society. It is, man. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for the boys, or for the kids. I shouldn't even say boys. It's girls too. And the conversation that I was having last night was, this friend of mine came up and he says, yeah, he has a son that just recently graduated high school and wants to be an airline pilot. And I'm like, fuck yeah, man. Anytime he wants to talk, I know some people, right? I can put him in touch with a bunch of people, and he can get the biz. He can find out, the road and what lies ahead and all that. So they reached out to a couple of universities that have flying programs like Embry-Riddle and a few more. And he goes, oh man, it's really expensive. Well,
yeah, they don't even need to do that. You don't get a bachelor's degree anymore to go to the majors.
Did you think that it was going to be cheap?
Yeah.
Did you think that he was just going to wake up and say, I want to be an airline pilot, and they were going to give him his wings?
Now.
It's not like going to the DMV. You don't like self-study for 10 minutes and go to the DMV and get a driver's license. It's like, this is a long, hard road to get there, man. And it's totally doable if he wants to do it, right? But he's going to have to work really hard. He's going to spend a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of time.
There's going to be a lot of pressure.
And if you don't have that foundation, say from maybe playing sports where you're used to getting yelled at and failure and coaching and pinpoint instruction, you're probably not going to thrive in that environment.
No, and it's got to be something that you really want to do too, because the pressure of check rides and the way that the pressure of check rides increase with every follow-on qualification, it's just heavier and heavier, right? And so if you're not really invested in it, if it's not something you really want to do, that pressure is going to make you buckle eventually.
I told him exactly that. I said, if it's not something that he goes to bed thinking about and wakes up thinking about, like, he has to be all in, completely passionate about it.
You do.
Or else he's never going to be awesome.
Otherwise, it's so painful. It's not worth it.
It's just too hard. And the same could be said for like being a doctor or being a great lawyer or any of those professions that are like
great anything.
It just takes so long to get through the pipeline for some of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, again, there's that sense of or idea of immediacy, I think, that is kind of resident in this
instant gratification
generation, you know, and they don't recognize that, not everybody is a social media influencer at the age of 20 or 21. Not everybody's a Mr. Beast or whatever example you want to use, right? Like for most of us, it's just a lot of effort over a lot of time to get to where we're at. So, but just going back to the idea of community. So Roscoe, in your experience, I'd be interested to know, because I know, like, my transition from the Air Force to the airlines, it's not the same, so, I fly with a different cat every week for the most part. Every once in a while I get to fly with a bro or a dude I knew in the military, or a good friend. And those trips are awesome. But, 80% of the time I'm flying with some dude I've never met before, and we have completely different backgrounds and there's not a lot of shared experience necessarily. And so, like, it's not the same as it was when we were in the fighter squadron and everybody and what's going on in everybody's lives, and there's that tight knit feel to taking care of each other and looking out for one another and showing up for each other and in good times and in bad times, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd just be curious to get from you, like, what has your experience been like having left the Air Force And where have you found community since then?
Oh, in a bunch of places, dude. First of all, I 100% agree with everything you just said. It's very difficult, and I know I've said this before. I'll continue saying it, but it sucks when you work that long and that hard on something, and then one day somebody hands you a flag and says thank you for your service, and it's over.
Yeah.
And there's no ceremony, there's no pomp. It's just like you walk out the door, And I remember the last time. I remember walking out of the squadron for the last time after I signed everything and I was headed over to the MPF to my final out. I had one signature with a tech sergeant, and that was it. And I
Yeah.
remember walking out of the squadron, and I stopped out there. And you remember we had that big rock that had the squadron patch on it with the little viper on the stick. And I stopped and I just kind of looked at it and I went, okay. And that was it. It's like,
Yeah.
and you know what was going on inside the squadron? People were getting ready for flights. People were getting dressed. Top 3 was getting the weather. Like,
Yeah.
they didn't even notice that
Nothing
Roscoe just
changed.
walked
Yeah.
out. Yeah, nothing changed. So I completely feel that. One thing that helped me a lot was before I retired, I was into coaching football. And through football, I met a lot of people, right? I mean, I met all the parents, obviously the kids, and some of those kids still call me, still come over to my house, still hang out, and I it's cool now that they've kind of grown up and they've got responsibilities and lives of their own. I got a tire guy out there, I got a brake guy out there. Like I know people in places now, and I can call up some of my old kids that I used to coach and be like, "Hey man, can I get a coach's discount for $2,500 worth of tires from a new truck or something?" But the parents, there was a small group of them, maybe 5 or 6 of them, that we just started hanging out. I think it was something really, just really, I don't know, innocuous. Like we got invited. I think it was the first fall that we were here. I was coaching, and some of the parents were having a Halloween party, and they invited Katie and I, and we're like, yeah, sure. I mean, we don't really know these people, but fuck it, man. I'll dress up as, I don't know, a vampire or something and go over there. And we hung out for a couple hours, and we played some games and kind of got to know them a little bit. And then that just kind of through the season and through the next season, that kind of built. And
Yeah.
I mean, and that was in 2016, almost, I mean, over, 9 years ago.
9 years ago.
Last night, we were hanging out with those same people that we met way back then at that stupid Halloween party, right? But that's where it starts, right? You have to make an effort. We could have easily said no and stayed inside and handed out candy to the people in the neighborhood and not met anybody and not had any meaningful connection out of it. You say hi and you exchange pleasantries and they move on to the next house.
Yeah.
But we decided to invest and make an effort, right? And we did, and I'm glad that we did. The year of COVID came around. I wasn't coaching anymore. Those same people, we also shared a common interest for being outdoors and going camping and hanging out. So when COVID hit, that was perfect. We drug our campers up here to Carefree Highway and parked them and left them there for 3 weeks. And every weekend we were out there and we were going four-wheeling, and that lasted for a couple of years. So I think it's I think for one, you're absolutely right. It can be very lonely when you get out. And I think this is why we see a lot of veterans turn to substance abuse, alternative coping mechanisms, I should say. But also it opens up opportunities to hang out with a crowd that you maybe wouldn't have hung out otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, until that time, all of my friends, probably in the world, were military dudes.
Yeah.
Because that's all we did for 2 decades. You go to a new squadron, you meet 30 to 60 new guys, you hang out with them on the weekends, and you go deploy with them, and you sleep with a guy for 6 months, and and the wives all
So to
hang out
speak.
together. It's like, so to speak.
Thank you.
It's like instant friends.
Yeah.
You show up
Yeah.
to a squadron, that first Friday night roll call, you got a bunch of bros,
Yeah.
and
Well,
and it's hard when you retire because all those guys kind of scatter and they go elsewhere. And you still keep in touch. It's not like those friendships
yeah.
are lost.
No, but I think the key to what you're saying is right. It's shared. It's shared experiences that that tie
You
people
definitely
together,
have to
right?
have shared common interest. Yes.
Right. Well, and not even, well, yeah, shared common interests and then shared experiences. And so my point in saying that is like you can find community in a lot of places, So I like to run, and I've found community in running to
Mhm.
a certain extent.
Same for
People that
writing.
are, yeah, right. Because guess what, man, I can talk to somebody about, dude, how'd you prepare for your half marathon or your marathon? How do you do your
Yep.
fueling? How do you, what are the things, what are the strategies that you use to try to improve your times? Like, what are the things that you do in training to try to get better, right? There's all these different things that I can share and learn from other people, and then I can share, and it's all a shared experience,
Mhm.
right? And that draws us to each other, right? That
Mhm.
draws that there's a connection there. um and so again, just going back to what we were talking about before, like find some things that you're interested in, find some groups. And but
Yeah.
but it goes back to what you were saying too, right? You've got to make the first step. You've got to make the step to
Yes.
go, all right, I'm gonna go to this meeting, I'm gonna go to this running club, and I'm gonna go run with people I don't know, and it's gonna be weird and awkward,
It
but
is
that's
weird.
okay.
Yeah.
It is, right?
But you have one
But
conversation with one guy and that
yeah, but
sparks.
well, that's just it. And the other thing too is you don't. I think a lot of times we're like, especially for me as an introvert, like I don't want to do that kind of stuff because it's like putting myself out there to begin with is like,
Yeah.
who the fuck's gonna want to talk to me? Like
Well, it's
I'm
uncomfortable. And what do we
yeah,
talk about all
right.
the
It's
time?
totally uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you get there, and then all of a sudden, it's like these people are so welcoming because guess what? They were you 6 months ago, a
Yep.
year ago, 2 years ago, right? Showing up, going, "What the fuck am I getting into?" And they had somebody come along and throw their arm over them and go, "Ah, dude, we're happy you're
Y-
here. What's going on? What do you need help with?
Yeah.
How can we get you better? What are you interested?" Like,
Yeah.
there's all those things that happen, right? And you don't recognize that because all you're doing is sitting there going, this is fucking weird and awkward, and I don't want to do this, and this feels really uncomfortable. But again, dude, it's that courage over comfort, right? It's getting outside of your comfort zone. It's getting into the arena for whatever it is that you're interested in and showing up and just giving it a
Yeah.
shot and seeing what happens, because we need community in our lives, and we can find it in so many areas. Dude, if you like to shoot, go find a shooting club. If if you like to run, go find a running club. If you, whatever it is, like, dude, church, I think church is even another great place where, even though I'm not a super churchy person, um it's a great place to find community, right?
It is. Yep.
It's a great place to find support and people that may be like-minded, or just people that can help you on your journey and help you kind of discern and understand things. There's so many avenues that we can go down that allow us to find and build community in our lives so that we don't feel disassociated, so that we don't feel disconnected. And I would just really encourage guys that are listening to the podcast that if you're in that place in your life, um, dude, find something, right? Like, find something you're interested in, find a group somewhere. I mean, there's groups for you. You've said this a million times on the podcast, dude. Google X interest and you'll find a million groups. I mean, even when we talk about, addiction and things like that, what is AA but a fucking support group,
It's a
right?
support
It's
group.
a way to
Yeah.
get connection with people who have shared experience that can help you through your process, that can help you understand what you're going through,
Yep.
that can empathize with the issues that you have in your life and can be there to support you and pick you up and lift you up. We need community.
Well, I want to say two things, and I'll say this one real quick, and then I want to add some anecdotal evidence to everything that you just said. You brought up church, and if you're one of these people that you don't have to be religious. I'm not advocating that you pray or worship to any god. I'm just saying, if you're one of these people who fall into that depression anxiety category, try going to church. And the reason I say that is because on Sunday mornings, you get, like, the church that we go to has 3 services, and each one of those things, the auditorium is fucking packed, man. I mean, it is there's not an empty seat in that place, and it's loud. It's like a rock concert. You go there for the energy, right? Good,
Yeah.
positive, happy energy. Okay. And if you're suffering from depression or anxiety, that's a good place to go be surrounded by several hundred very happy people.
Yeah.
Okay. And you may not talk to a single person when you go in, but guess what? When you walk through the door, there's going to be a guy standing there that greets you with a smile and says, "Hey, man, thanks for coming today. Welcome." And then you go up the stairs, and there's going to be another guy holding that door that says, "Hey, man, thanks for coming. Let me show you your seat. Come on." And I'm just saying that it brings great energy, and that has an effect on you. It does.
Well, and absolutely. And, to take to even a further extreme, like you may think you're a complete dork, right? You may be a complete Star Wars dork or uh, a Harry Potter dork or whatever, right? Dude, do you know how many groups there are probably in your community
yeah.
that are dedicated to people that want to get together? Like I saw a video on Instagram the other day of dudes getting knighted with fake lightsabers,
Yes.
into whatever group it was, right? They were walking down the dork
Dude.
line with lightsabers overhead and being knighted as, I don't know, fucking Luke Skywalker or whatever.
This is
Like,
great.
and I'm making fun of it to a certain extent because I'm an asshole, but well, I am, but
Well, I bet there's
and
a community of assholes out there
I'm
too.
judgy. But my point is, yeah, it probably is, right? Maybe I should look that up. But my point is like, dude, there's like, look at Comic-Con or things
Yeah.
like that. Like people that like to dress up and
I
do
have
that
friends
kind of
that go to
stuff.
that
Like,
every year. They love it.
dude, there are
Yeah.
so many people that are into that. And if that's something that you're into, you're not alone, right? Like,
Yeah.
go find your Game of Thrones or your Harry Potter or your Star Wars or your Star Trek, whatever the thing is. There are people out there that share that interest with you.
Yep. Well, what I was going to throw out for some anecdotal evidence, you have to. I think it all comes back, and this is where I go selfish, right? And back to be one change one basics is it's all on you. And I had this. I guess I had this. I don't know. I had this idea in my head that kind of that field of dreams, if you build it they will come kind of mentality, right? Well, if I think I'm going to do this, then people will just start calling me and they'll help me out and I'll get some coaching and da da da. It doesn't work that way. You have to be proactive. You have to make the initial phone calls. You have to make those connections. And it's taken me it's probably taken me a year and a half, or 2 years to get to the point where just today, I got put in touch through some connections that I'd made, blind messages on Facebook to people that I found by doing research, and I friended them on Facebook, sent them a message. "Hey, man, would you mind having a conversation with me? I have some questions." "Yeah, dude, give me a call." We set up a call. We'll talk for a little bit, and that person will put me in touch with another person, and that person will put me in touch with another person. And today I got put in touch with 2 writers. One of them is an Apache guy, and one of them is an F-18 Top Gun guy. So when I tell you that the communities are out there, not only that, you can niche this thing way down too. And yes, I have a community of bros out there, male and female, that I can call and ask questions about the industry, or, "Hey, what do you think about this? I'm struggling with this one plot line or whatever." I have a bunch of people that I can reach out to, but through just keep nugging through it and keep connecting with people, I niched it all the way down to 2 guys who have been on the pointy end, the kill and survive end, right? And are doing the things that I'm doing. And so now, I mean, now we've got a really tight, small group of people who have like not only common interests, but super unique experiences that we can talk about and we can share, right? So the point in saying all that is you have to make the effort. You have to be proactive on it. You have to try, and you have to reach out, and you're going to get told no, and you're not going to be welcomed by some, and that's okay. Move on to the next one.
But I think what's even more important about what you're saying too is sometimes it takes time, right? So don't go to your Star Trek thing on the first time and go, "Oh, nobody talked to me.
Yeah, this is
and
dumb.
So this isn't for me anymore." Like,
well, then I would say, did you talk to anybody?
Yeah, exactly.
Or did you just stand in the corner in your fucking
But the thing is,
Spock
that's
outfit?
the thing, though, right? Is you've got to go back. You've got to go back, and you've got to make an attempt to build some connection, to build some relationships, right? That's how it works. It's a two-way street. It's not just, "Hey, I'm going to show up and everybody's going to embrace me with wide open arms, and this is going to be a big happy gooey affair, right? It's there's some work that has to be done on your part. But the
Yep.
bottom line is that we need connection, right? And so find connection and find community in whatever ways you can. And I know that's really, and dude, I'm here to tell you that's hard as an introvert. It's difficult as an introvert, and connection means different things for different people. You know, you may, if you're an extrovert, you know, you may find connection in a whole bunch of different venues. You may find it in a whole bunch of different ways, right? You may have connection at work. You may have connection, you know, on the weekends with a group that you're involved with, or church, or you know, you may have several forms of connection. If you're an introvert, you may have a point of connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you need a point of, my point is you need to find a point of connection,
Something.
right? There
Yeah.
there's something that has to be there. You know, and for me, a lot of ways, um, some of it is just through my one of five, my close circle of friends, you know, and the stuff that you and I have done together, the stuff that we've done with Francis. You know, a great point of connection in my life has been, um, you know, the relationship that's grown with Francis and his wife and my wife through just running, you know,
Yeah.
and going to these different events and competing, you know, and doing half marathons and Disney runs and things like that. Like, because one, it keeps me motivated to stay in shape and to do things to prepare for the next race. But it's also just been a fun experience with those guys, and something to look forward to. Um, but another thing for me, and it can be this too, right? Is my Orange Theory Fitness group, the group that I've kind of grown to love and know at Orange Theory Fitness as
Mm-hmm.
I've been going there for the last 5 years. You know, I've made some great friends there, and
Yeah.
they're people that I can rely on, and that I, you know, I have connection with, and I have lunch with on occasion, and
Yeah.
that we do things with. And so you can find, my point in saying that is that you can find it in so many different areas.
Yeah, you absolutely can. You know, a lot of times you have to make the first move.
Yeah.
And an example of that is like Katie's very social, she's very bubbly, and she'll go up and she'll just talk to random people. And I can do that, and I do it occasionally. It's probably not my most comfortable, but sitting there in a chair looking at glaciers out the front window of this cruise ship, and a dude sits down next to me with a little drawing book, and he's trying to draw the scene out in front. And his wife said something to him. She was kind of over his shoulder, and she said something to him, and he says, "Well, it's actually kind of easy because of the contrast of these colors and da da da." And I said, "Well, hey," and he's sitting right next to Katie's on my left, he's on my right, and I said, "I'm curious. I'm kind of watching you out of the corner of my eye, and it's very good drawing, but I'm curious the way that you view this, because I'm sitting here thinking about how would I paint this in words if I were to write a paragraph to describe this scene. It's not that much different than what you're doing, I think. You know, our interpretation is here. Our output is slightly different, but our interpretation, I think, is the same because
Yeah.
we're looking at the shades of the rocks and the colors and how would you describe that color of blue? Well, he's going to look into his little bucket
Yeah.
of paints,
He's
and I'm going to
expressing it on paper
yeah, and
through
I'm going to look
water, through
for
color, and you're trying to do it through words.
yeah, I'm going to look through my thesaurus and start looking for how do I describe this? Is this a deep blue? Is this a swimming pool blue? Like what color is, you know? And so that started a conversation between he and I that lasted about 6 hours. We just sat there looking out the window and enjoyed conversation about, I mean, we went down some freaking rabbit holes, dude. But it was really good, and all it took was me going, "Hey man, that's a good drawing." And my point is, I guess, as comfortable as I was sitting in that chair, not talking to anybody, just enjoying the view, which is really the whole reason that I went on that cruise anyway. Katie said, "What are you looking forward to the most?" I said, "Looking out the window. That's it. I enjoy looking out the window. I just want to sit there, drink coffee, and look out the window." But that conversation led to us talking all day, going to dinner with each other that night, talking the next day, getting off the boat on the last day. And we actually hung out one night, went and saw a show, and then went and saw a concert down in the main atrium or whatever. Got off the boat and met up for breakfast and coffee. Well, they didn't have coffee, but I had coffee. And then he is a art teacher in Indiana, University of Indiana. And so he says, "Well, hey, I can get us into the art museum for free." Cool. Let's go to the art museum. Roscoe doesn't do art museums very well, but I had a guide. and he started telling me all about art. And
Yeah.
it was really neat,
Yeah.
and to the point where we had shared so much about being creative and being proud yet embarrassed about our work at the same time. And I sent him a copy of my manuscript and asked for his input on it. And I'm curious to see, I selected the people that I selected for that very specifically because I've got some females in there. I've got some people who read a lot of historical fiction in there. I've got some people who are very critical in there. And then I've got some creatives in there who are going to take a very different look at it, I think. And all that started from just an initial like, hey man, that's a pretty good drawing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, that's just it though, dude, right? Like you put yourself out there, and I think that's important for people to understand is you never know how a conversation can turn into something so much more. And guess what? If it doesn't, you're no less off, right? Like there's nothing lost by attempting to have that. And for the introverts out there, I'll say too, like my OTF example, my Orange Theory Fitness example, when I first started going to OTF, I don't talk to people. Like especially for workouts, right? Like I'm showing up, I'm working out, I'm done, I'm out, right? And it wasn't like I made relationships and built community with people in the first, 2 or 3 classes I was there. It was a couple months, it was 6 months before I was kind of brought into the inner circle for the group that I exercise with regularly, where I was like one of the regulars now. And,
Mm-hmm.
and I was kind of like accepted into the fold. So it takes time, right? But the point is you got to stay with it, man. And you gotta put yourself out there a little bit. You gotta ask some questions. You gotta extend yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
You gotta share some things. You gotta ask questions and get to know people, and that can be really uncomfortable, but it's important because that's how we build community.
Well, in your example there, I have a similar example that I'll tell you in just a second, but I wonder if some of that might have been that the group that you were trying to infiltrate has some filters up, because how many people go to OTF once or
Well,
twice and they
sure,
never come back,
absolutely, yeah,
right? So
and
they're
I
like,
think
all
that's
right,
true in
here's a
most
new
groups.
guy over here. Let's see how
Yeah,
long he lasts. And
yeah,
you probably got a
he'll be
side
gone in a
bet
month.
over and under over here, and
Yeah,
I'll give him the over and under is 2.5. So, you know, and then after
once they found
you,
out I was a fighter pilot, I
yeah,
was in. No, I'm just
well, after
joking.
they after you proved your consistency and you
Yeah,
probably wore your speed jeans in one day,
no,
um,
no speed jeans, but
yeah, you probably wear your bomber jacket all around with your fucking I'm Cass
yeah,
superstar
you see
patch.
me all the time with that, don't you?
Yeah.
Fuck you,
Um,
Roscoe.
my similar story to that was I joined the search and rescue in Idaho, in the county that we were in. The guy that ran it was a retired master sergeant that worked out at excuse me, that worked out at Mountain Home Air Force Base, and it's run by the sheriff's department. And I got curious and talked to him one day, and he goes, "Yeah, man, come on, it's all volunteer, showing up." And so I showed up for the first meeting, and it's kind of boring. It was like they did like one business meeting a month and then one training meeting a month. And so I showed up for one of the business meetings. I'm like, oh, this is fucking boring. And so I talked to him.
You're like, this
This
is
is
stupid.
not what I like. Give me my GPS and I'll go get in my Jeep and go find people. Um, and so I talked to him afterwards. He goes, yeah, well, you're a new guy and we got to get you trained up a little bit. So you're going to need to come to the training meetings and you got to come to 6 before we give you your card. And that was their filter, right?
Yeah,
Because people show up for 1 or 2 and they're like, this ain't for me. Well, I showed up for the first training meeting. 2 or 3 weeks later, I show up for the first training meeting and they're doing land navigation. And so I'm fresh off of my JTAC ALO deployment,
you got line
right?
nav down. Yeah,
And so they pull out these 1 to 50s and compasses and shit like that. And the guy that's teaching it, I'm sitting in the back of the room going, no, dude, no. So at the break, I waited. At the break, I went up and I go, can I just show you like something? Like you just taught that entire class and you missed the first step. And the first step is orient your map to north, right? So you have to orient your map first and then you can do all the things, right? By the time everybody came off break, he and I talked for the 10 minutes that everybody was on break. By the time he came back to break, he goes, you're going to stay up here and help me teach. And so at the end of that meeting, the guy came in with my card He goes, yeah, you're good here.
Yeah.
And so that it's fun. It's a funny story. The point of the story was the group that you're trying to get into may have some filters up, so you have to show
Yeah,
some
they may have some
consistency.
criteria, right?
Yeah,
You're gonna have to
exactly.
show a little consistency. You're gonna have to show up, and you may have to show up more than once, which
Yeah.
is what we were talking about earlier, right? It may take more than one time. It's not just show up and expect everything to fall into your lap. That's not what we do at the Be One Change One, right? You have to
It takes
you actually
effort.
have to do a little bit of work.
Takes effort.
Got to put yourself out there a little bit. Got to make a little bit of effort. You gotta prove that you're there for the right reasons.
Yep.
Most groups are going to be that way, right?
Well, and I would encourage people to try new things too.
Yeah,
And I know
absolutely.
we sound like
Put
a broken
yourself out
record.
there a little bit.
Yeah, we sound like a broken record
Get
because
drunk and make bad mistakes, like I said
yeah,
a
there you
couple
go. Wear
podcasts ago, right?
pajamas. Fuck it.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned going to a running club, and I can only imagine how uncomfortable that was for you.
Yeah.
Just because I know you, and I know that I have several times thought, man, I really don't want to go and do this, but I really need to go and do this. I
Yeah.
can learn so much from these people, or hell, just if nothing else for the experience, right? And maybe I don't even have to talk to anybody. Maybe I can just watch that guy. Take a look at everybody's shoes. Like, oh, well, half of them have Hoka's and half of them have, I don't know what the other brand is.
Brooks.
There you go. You learn, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you actively engage with those people, that learning goes deeper, I think. Just like your Star Trek example, you go in there and you look at other people and how they made their costumes. And you're like, wow, he used PVC and he used duct tape.
Yeah.
And next year when you go back, maybe your costume's a little bit better.
Well, it goes back to that be curious piece too, right? Like ask
I think so.
questions. Don't show up and expect everybody to just fall at your feet and pull you into the fold, right? Ask questions.
One of the best things that happened out of that conversation I had with that guy was he told me he was Mormon. The next guy that I talked to told me he was Jewish. And I mean, I unloaded on questions for those people, I'm trying to understand it.
Yeah,
right?
try to understand it.
Hey,
Sure.
I want to know where you're coming from. And I want to know what the differences are. And I want to be able to see through it, because I mean, I know a little bit about the Mormon faith, not a lot. I've read a few books. I've watched a few movies or documentaries. I don't know shit about Judaism, except it's Old Testament stuff. And,
Yeah.
when he started laying some stuff down for me, I was like, wow, this is really fascinating, man. And just how
pretty cool.
it was neat to see. It was neat to have them explain it, and for me to just sit there and ask questions and have them do all the talking and just soak it all in. Of course, I'm taking notes of stuff that I need to go and read up on, later down the road and everything. But holy crap, man, like you say, stay curious and ask questions.
Yeah.
One of the best things you can do is say, yeah, I don't know what that is, and have somebody explain it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think, my whole point in bringing this topic up is just there's no reason to be lonely, guys, right? Like there's tons of opportunity out there for us to build community. And you never know too, right? Like by building community, you may find one of those 1 of 5. And you may find it in different areas. There may be different aspects of your life where you need, specific support or, somebody who you may find mentors in that process, there's so many things like you were talking about, Roscoe, just like with coaching football and the parents you met, and how those things led to other opportunities, right?
Yeah.
That's how we create opportunity in our life. You don't create opportunity in your life by sitting at home by yourself, twiddling your thumbs and wishing you had something that you don't. You create opportunity by you got to put yourself out there. You got to get in the arena. You got to get involved. You got to take some risk. You got to take some risk, right? You got to have a little courage over comfort, and do those things. And that would be my encouragement to anybody listening to the podcast that may be struggling with some of that. Is just, dudes, it's okay, right? Put yourself out there. Find those things that you're interested in, or find those things that you think you may be interested in, and go try them. Find a group and go to it a couple of times.
Yep.
And see if something sticks. See if you can build some relationships, right?
Yeah.
Find community in whatever different ways that you can. I have a father-in-law who, is pretty introverted, but has found a ton. He's like in a God, how old is he now? He's probably in his late 70s, early 80s. Dude, he plays softball like almost year round. Like he's on this
Hell yeah.
older men's softball league, and they travel all over the place playing softball. And it's
Yeah.
vitality to him. I mean, it means so much to him, and he has so much community that's built from that. And so like those are the things that we need in our lives to fight this epidemic of loneliness, and to fight against just this pull of social media, especially for the younger generation, that tries to kind of isolate you in certain respects, and keep you in your room on your computer. You got to get out there.
I'll be the first one to say, man, I love sitting back here in silence and just reading my book, and I don't turn the TV on a lot.
Yeah, but that's different.
But on the other hand, I got a text message from a lady. This was back in, I guess, September, October. I got a text message from my manager's wife, of all people, and she goes, "Hey, I am part of a local kind of Northwest book club here, and we're going to read your book for our book club. Would you consider having dinner with us and letting us ask you questions?" And at first I was like, "Fuck yeah, man, that's awesome." And then I realized, oh man, I got to go to dinner after work. I got to go to work all day, and then I got to go to dinner and pretend to be. I mean, and there's going to be like 10 ladies there, and we're going to some uppity restaurant that, and so Katie and I, we go there, and it ended up being fun. It was a lot of fun. It was, they were genuinely inquisitive about why the fuck did you guys do this, right?
Yeah.
And for the listeners, if you haven't read No New Lessons, you'll know, you need to go get it and read it, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But what that led to, though, was we had a really good time. We all had a really good time. And two really good things came out of that. One, they invited Katie to join their book club. So now Katie just found community, right?
Yeah.
And that woman that texted me to come to that book club, I asked her husband at work one day, "Hey, what's her favorite thing to read?" He goes, "Oh, she really loves to read historical fiction." "Oh, really? Have I got a book for her?" So she's one of my beta readers for my book right now.
Nice.
So yeah, trying new things and getting out there and maybe doing some shit that on the surface anyways, it doesn't look like something you want to do. You never know, man.
You don't.
You never know.
I think what's important to what you were just saying too is, right, like, especially me as an introvert, like I appreciate my alone time. That's how I recharge. But that's different from the time that I need to recharge is different from the connection I need in my life as well, right? And so, and I found connection. I found connection through you as my friend in the podcast that we do, right? I found connection through the things that you and Francis and I have done together, and the things that Francis and his wife and Alicia and I do together. I find connection through all these other different things. And I'm just like you, dude. Like there's times where it's hilarious at our house because we'll make plans and we'll be all excited about it until the day comes. And then it's the end of the week.
I'm the same
Seriously,
way.
right? And then it's
Like,
the end of the week.
I got to put pants on.
Like,
really?
Why the fuck are we doing this? Like, I'm tired. I just got off a trip. I don't want to go, but then I go and it's awesome, right? And I have a great time.
Yeah.
And I have these points of connection that happen along the evening, where I form a greater bond with an individual, or I learn something about somebody that I didn't know before, or I learn something about myself that I didn't know before through conversation. And so, it's just, and I say all that to say that I know it's difficult sometimes, right? I know it's really hard to put yourself out there in those contexts. And I've even used my introvertedness at times to make an excuse to not do those things. And that was the wrong choice.
Yeah, I feel that, man. And I think I was laughing at you while you're saying that, because I'm sitting here thinking, like, for women, it's, I got to put a bra on.
Yeah.
Like, I just took my bra off, man. I'm done for the day. For me, it's my, when I come home and I take my underwear off, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere after that.
Yeah.
But then again, man, I've had a few of those where I've done the same thing that you have. And then I kind of look back on it and I'm like, man, I probably should have went to that. I bet it was fun.
Yeah.
Or that guy was there and I really wanted to talk to him about something, or so not necessarily regret, but Yeah.
No, but it goes back to opportunity, right? Like
Yeah.
we create
Missed
opportunities
opportunities.
by taking
Yep.
the opportunity to put ourselves out there, to put ourselves in those
Yep.
environments where maybe we're not as comfortable. And like, it's just take advantage of those things because you never know what's going to come from it.
Yeah.
You may find a really great relationship. You may find a really great friendship. You may find a really great mentor. You just don't know.
Yep. Sitting there scrolling social media all day is not building community.
No.
Go to a library, go to church. I don't know, go for a walk around the neighborhood, meet the other people that are walking around the neighborhood.
Find a walking group.
I know all the people. I don't know all their names, but I definitely know their faces of all the people that walk around my neighborhood because we all go walking at pretty much the same time. It's when the weather's really nice, right?
Yeah.
And we all say hi to each other, and I know most of their names, not all of them. Doug, remember Doug came on the podcast?
Yeah.
I met him walking around the neighborhood one day.
Yeah, well, and we've talked about the younger generation and like, men in their 30s with the statistic that we talked about, but I guarantee you that if I were to Google or check statistics for the older generation, like one of the largest things that affects our older population is loneliness.
Probably.
Because they're
Yep.
disconnected, they don't have family around anymore. Nobody's checking on them.
Yep.
They don't have that community, which is why sometimes those group environments or retirement homes can be such a boon for them because they find community in
Assisted
that, right?
facilities and things like
they
that.
find
Yeah.
people that have shared experiences, shared life experiences, come from the same, chewed the same dirt that they did,
Yeah.
have the kind of the same viewpoints they do, right? That's how we find community. So
Yeah, man. Heck yeah. Get out there and try some new shit.
Yep.
All right. What else?
What else you got?
Be the one.
Be the change.
Thanks for flying with the Be One Change One podcast. If you got something out of this show, then be the one and share it in your circles of influence.
You can be our wingman through our website at www.be1change1.com. That's B and the number 1, change and the number 1.com.
We invite you to be the one and join our fighter squadron on social media at Be1 Change One on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can follow us at Paul Roscoe White on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as Roscoe's website, www.paulroscoewhite.com.
You can email us from the website and please leave comments, share, and ask questions, or leave ideas of things you would like to discuss on future podcasts. Most importantly, be the one that helps us win the algorithm by leaving a review on whatever platform you're listening on.
Thanks for joining. Until next time, be the one.